Hi, this is Amir with a special edition of the Bulletin Board Heroes, the best of the blue chips 2024. Starting off with Anglo American, where the fund started with the unfilled gap through the 50-day moving average on the 7th of March. That was the starting gun on the rally there, and it's obviously one of our signals that we mention in terms of the small caps. Obviously, it works the same on the blue chips as well. Another unfilled gap to the upside a couple of weeks later. Then we had our consolidation above a rising 200-day line just before the bid was announced. Interesting that the next target there, the top of that triangle there from basically this time last year, has become the trading range for the shares either side of 26.50. Moving along to Barclays, and the stock reminding us how much the banks are ripping off at the moment. Ironic that in a deep banking crisis, the banks are doing better than they have done for quite some time. The rally here, I suppose, started with the gap close buy signal, which is basically end of day close above the top of that gap there. That was around the £1.43 level, and then we had closes above that going into November. After that, another chance to get a bit of glory with the gap through the 50 and 200-day moving averages there back in February. Obviously, the rally has not been totally straightforward in terms of having gaps down as well, but you can see the overall progression there within a rising trend channel from October still very much intact, and it looks as though the shares are heading for the £2.50 area perhaps as soon as the end of next month. Ideally, we stay above the old resistance there, that late April resistance at 208 in the meantime. Moving on to a stock which I don't think I've ever looked at, and it's good to have a look at it now, I suppose. Bakkavor here, rising trend channel there from back in September. But as you can see, as you probably knew I was going to say, the gap through the 50-day moving average, the middle of December, was the starting gun on the rally, and we haven't really looked back since. There was another consolidation for the shares on a rising 200-day line going into the end of February, and then finally a golden cross for the stock in early March. So quite a few signals there for the stock, and current situation is that we are just hitting, or we just hit to the top of that rising trend channel from September. The level there around £1.40, let's say, end of day close above £1.40, could take us up to the upper parallel of that rising trend channel from July, as high as £1.61. Looking for that maybe by the end of next month as well. Ideally, we stay above the old April resistance, £1.24 in the meantime. Another takeover situation, which came in the form of curries, and one of the rules here is that 4 to 6 weeks before a takeover, you tend to have a rug pull. We certainly had that with this stock, with the low there towards 45 pence before the big announcement in February. Since then, a very rocky ride indeed. Obviously, second rug pull there. Obviously, the sweep from 72 pence area down to the 52 pence would ensure that most weak hands were out, and then we're back up again. Still in a rising trend channel, that channel there from back in August last year, and that's heading for 85 pence as the ultimate target, maybe on a 2 to 3 month view. Once again, we'd like to see the shares remain above old April resistance, which in this case is around the 65 pence level ahead of a move to 85 pence. Interesting that CMC is having a great time at the moment. My explanation, a fundamental one, is that given the very high state of tax, you don't actually mind losing half your money on a spread bet, but at least it is tax-free if you win. Rising trend channel there from back in January, and obviously we had the gap through the 200-day line as the starting gun for that rally. You could argue that the rally started a bit earlier there at 96 pence when we broke that August resistance line. But the big obvious signal there was the gap through the 200-day line. Gapping through resistance, another signal there, and we've had those all the way up. Current situation is that the channel is roughly £2.60 at the floor and heading for up to £3.15 by the end of next month at the current rate of progress. Moving on to another stock which may be rather more low profile than most, but here we've got Greencore. The rally here started with a bear trap gap reversal, one of our favorite setups, so moving to new lows and then gapping up. and never really looked back since that time in early October. Current position is that we're in a rising trend channel. We've just come off the back of an unfilled gap through resistance, and that suggests that we've got plenty of gas in the tank for a move to the top of the rising trend channel of £1.86. In fact, I would suggest that that's just a mid-move consolidation, and that we will actually head even higher than that. The upper parallel of the rising trend channel currently heading as high as £2.30, which could be a 2 to 3 month time frame target. Very interesting setup there, given the current consolidation at the highest levels. Moving on to a situation which is an obvious winner in the current gold, silver and copper rising market. Here we've got Hochschild, and here rising trend channel in place since January, top of the channel there to heading with £2.10, and the shares hugging that channel fall quite well. The old resistance there in April around 163, and above that looking for a move as high as £2.10 maybe by the end of July, or even sooner than that. So it looks as though this is a strongly trending situation. Interesting that the turnaround here came without any gaps at all, so a very smooth progression there. The initial trigger, a break of that resistance line there from back in November, back in March, but obviously at the time that was something you had to guess rather than be shown as a gap would do. On to Hargreaves Lansdowne, another bid situation, and here following the rule that 4 to 6 weeks before a takeover you tend to get a rug pull. In this case the rug pull was back in March and also in April, and then the shares had their big move. Current situation is that we have a notional rising trend channel there heading for as high as £12.30, and that could be on the way at least while we're above the floor, the top of the latest gap to the upside at £10.40. I suppose the real sizzle here was the gap that we had back at the end of April and the failure of the shares to fill that gap, so that gave you the entry point around the £8.12 level. Keller has been a great riser over the course of the year to date, and here you can see that we had the juiciest of signals with the bear trap gap reversal back in October, so moving to new lows and then gapping up. Current situation is that we're in a rising trend channel which has been in place since July, but it looks as though the latest gap higher and consolidation is actually a mid-move consolidation, and like Greencore we could see a fresh leg to the upside towards £18. So actually quite an exciting situation there. A near-term support around just under the £13 level. Speaking of banks, as we were a minute or two ago, we've got NatWest on the roster now, rising trend channel there from back in October. The interest here, I suppose, is that we had the gap down there, and then we had the gap close by signal that basically came through on the 15th of November. A bit of jiggery-pokery, but a gap fill and then a bounce higher, and that really started the whole of the move that we've got at the moment. Another chance of glory back in March, where the gap closed by signal closing above the gap there at £2.50, and that would have given you a nice juicy entry, as was the other gap closed by signal back in April as well. So plenty of notional entry points there on the way up for NatWest. Current situations, we're looking for the shares to stay above £2.95, the top of the last gap, and above that looking for a retest of the best levels of the year to date towards £3.30, hopefully by the end of next month. Another spread betting bonanza at plus 500, and here beautiful entry point there. Again, the bear trap gap reversal, and here we've got the shares basically giving us that nod back at the end of October. Rising trend channel since then, and the current view is that above the Friday support area around £21.40, looking for the top of the rising trend channel from September as high as £24 by the end of next month or even sooner. But it looks as though the winner in terms of these big blue chips has been the bear trap gap reversal. Moving along to Royce, and here we've got that rising trend channel which has been in place since back in August. Top of the channel there heading for £4.95, which we could see as soon as the end of next month. The rally here basically interspersed with gaps to the upside, unfilled gaps to the upside. The Best one though was probably back in October with an island gap reversal, so gapping down and then gapping up. That tends to be one of the most reliable signals that you can have, apart from obviously just the outright gap through to new highs. Moving on to the last two, and the first one is Trustpilot. Here, nice rising trend channel in place since July. The trigger for the move here, bear trap gap reversal again. We can see that since then we've got that rising trend channel, and at the top of the channel heading as high as £2.60. We're looking for that at least while we're above recent support, double tested support at £2.03. Finishing off with Vistry Group, and here you see the rising trend channel in place since July. The interest here, I suppose, is the way that the shares gapped down back in October, double gap down there, and then we had the gap higher back in November. So that was the island bear trap reversal, tends to be the most solid signal, and that was the one that's worked for Vistry. Since then, rising trend channel, as I said, and shares bouncing off the 50-day line back in April, well above that now. This looks like a sideways bull flag consolidation ahead of a move up to the £15.20 area, maybe as soon as the end of next month. But new support coming in at and above old resistance, a strong signal there. That's it from me today. More updates of a more usual kind later in the week.